spotlighting the very best at Geneva College Golden Tornado Athletics. This is Tornado Tuesday. And now, here are your hosts, Van Zanic and Andrew Fee.
Well, welcome back to Tornado Tuesdays, the third virtual episode of Tornado Tuesdays. I'm Andrew Fee with Van Zanic. We're excited to bring you the last episode of the 2020 calendar year, as we will officially be on break as of Friday, which is much needed with this semester has felt like a year in itself.
We are excited to say goodbye to 2020, to say the least.
Yeah, and the 2-week break is something that I think we've been talking about since September, so it's pretty exciting. But with that, I think, we have some more official news. We might have mentioned it from the President's Athletic Conference, but it's now official with basketball. So, Van, if you want to touch on that.
Yeah, the President's Council met last week with our Commissioner, Joe Underko, and they did approve the athletic director's recommendations in terms of starting men's and women's basketball. January 23rd would be the first start date. So as of now, it's an 11-game schedule, but most likely 13 because they pushed the date back a week. The first 2 games that were supposed to be scheduled will most likely have to be rescheduled, and we reworked into the schedule somehow. So we're anticipating if things don't change, and of course things are likely to change between now and then. They seem to be doing that a lot, but as it's scheduled now, we're looking at a 13-game schedule with men's and women's playing at opposite sites on the same night. So yeah, we're looking forward to that. The Health and Safety Committee put together again by the Commissioner came up with a lot of different recommendations as they pertain to testing, game day protocols, how we're going to be treating officials, their testing, and those types of things. And so a little bit more clarity on what it's going to look like for game day. It's going to be a lot of work. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, a lot of work for these institutions, even to the point of where the way benches are aligned and all those different things. Still some things to be determined about fans, what we're going to be looking at, whether students and staff and parents and those types of things will be allowed to attend. But I think most of those decisions will be relegated to where we're at in terms of the state and what the governor mandates are at that point. So still some things to be determined. We personally at Geneva are looking at some testing options for our student athletes. We know for sure they will be tested. That much we know. Basketball in particular is classified as a high contact sport. So we're looking at the possibility of testing our student athletes 3 times per week during the basketball season. Some considerably less for the other sports. So a lot still to be determined, but again, path to go forward is good. So it gives us some hope moving into the holiday season. And then once we hit January, at this point, our men and women or basketball players are scheduled to be back on January 8th to start preparing for what we hope will be a season. So some hope for sure on the horizon.
Yeah, just kind of reflecting back on the semester, it's been interesting, but I think Coach DeMarco and I were talking about that this weekend. The way we've been able to adapt in recruiting meetings throughout the semester. I don't want to say Geneva was behind the times, but maybe we just didn't jump into technology as much as we wanted to in previous years. But the way we've been able to use technology for recruiting meetings this semester has really been awesome to see, and we're still making great improvements on campus, led by Scott Barnes, CIO. But I'm just really grateful for the way our staff in the athletic department across campus has adapted and overcome these crazy circumstances.
We didn't have many options, right? I mean, if we want to keep up with the rest of our competition in terms of recruiting, and you and I know as well as anyone how difficult that is in a regular world, so much competition, so many colleges in our very, very close proximity, especially within our conference. So a lot of local competition, regional competition. So yeah, being able to do things virtually, there's a lot of things that we have been able to implement through this pandemic that we're going to most likely continue into the future. It's a great way to introduce Geneva to folks that can't make the trip on a regular basis if they're from the West Coast or wherever. Obviously, we have a much better percentage, a much better chance of getting kids to Geneva if we can physically get them on campus. We have a great track record, and for obvious reasons. But at least being able to introduce Geneva, the mission of Geneva, give them some ideas of what our coaches and our student athletes are like here, can be very, very valuable. And I think we've seen the fruit of that here during this first semester. And a lot of hard work has gone into putting those things together. And hopefully we'll be able to reap the benefits in the future.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back with our head softball coach, Van Zanic, to talk about softball.
Oh, sounds familiar. Okay, sounds good.
Welcome back to Tornado Tuesdays. This is the awkward show where we get to interview you, Van, and talk about softball. So we don't technically have a guest this week, but that's okay.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, it was like kind of like when we did golf, really uneventful. But we get to talk about softball, definitely recap kind of the fall season, and then looking forward to the spring. So I'll just start, it's a question we've asked everyone about losing last spring. I know you've mentioned a few times, like talk about that when, you kind of got the phone call and had to say, hey, we're going home.
Yeah, I mean, I've relived that whole like 2 or 3 day time frame in my mind so many times, and it was such a roller coaster ride for about 48 or 72 hours when you were getting calls from the commissioner. And obviously, as being the athletic director, I was in the midst of that conversation as well, not just for softball, but the entire department. And I was speaking with our president at times. I was talking to the commissioner at times. And, one day you felt like, well, there's a possibility maybe we'll keep going. And then, well, maybe then the championships got canceled, but we still might have a conference season. And so in the midst of that, you're trying to do your best to communicate with the softball team that is literally in the beginning of stages of a season, with some high expectations and some very exciting young team that we were looking forward to be with. And so that was probably the biggest memory for me. That the drawback is looking back and how it just kind of went up and down throughout that period. And then ultimately that Friday morning when we finally did get the call that the PAC was shutting down, you obviously were with us. There was a junior varsity game that morning, and I was still back at the residence with the rest of the varsity people, and we were on our way to come support the JV team, getting ready for our doubleheader that day. And we ultimately turned around, and you had to actually pull the team off the field in the middle of a game. And so again, and I had to call Coach Sumner and get baseball off the field. Coach Thompson had a track meet at the same time. So the timing was just really unfortunate. It was tough enough news to have to deliver, but to literally take student athletes out of the field of competition in the middle of it is so tough. And again, we were fairly fortunate with just 2 seniors, but having those discussions with our 2 seniors that not only is your season over, but your career's over. That's something that'll be ingrained in my mind for the rest of my career for sure.
I think the only thing that kind of helped through that process was, when it happened, it was a shock. But then over the next few weeks, basically the whole country shut down. So it wasn't something that, we were just feeling alone, just Geneva or just athletic shut down. I mean, the whole country shut down. So it made it a little easier. But talk about coming back in the fall, when we were probably a little more unique than a lot of colleges where we were able to practice and, consistently. Talk about this fall season.
We really wanted to, not just softball, but for all of our student athletes, we really wanted to have as much of an opportunity to participate athletically. I think for a lot of reasons, we've touched on the mental health aspects and what that means to be a part of a program. So we really worked hard as an athletic director group to see exactly what we needed to do to get our kids on the field. And for softball specifically, in a normal non-COVID season, we're practicing for 4 weeks. And it's good. It's a good evaluation time. But because the NCAA changed their recommendations from weeks to days, 114 days for the year, we had a little bit more flexibility. And so we took advantage of that with 6 weeks. We practiced 3 or 4 days a week. And then on Saturdays, we were able to do inter-squad games, which, put uniforms on then and make it as realistic as possible. And, the other thing to remember is we have freshmen coming into the program that are trying to onboard properly. But this group, similar to what we went through in the spring, they went through an even difficult time as seniors in their high school year, having already lost a senior season in high school. So they were very anxious to get on the field as well, but they hadn't been out there for very long. Some of them were able to play, some summer ball and such throughout the summertime, but getting the group together And I think because we only lost 2 seniors and we had really great retention, almost all of our players came back from a year ago. They really had that one common denominator in what they went through in the spring. And so just having that cohesion as a group just coming in already in the fall, it's a really close-knit group that we have. And so being able to work through that, getting the rust off and playing some legitimate inter-squad games was really helpful. And, for us, I mean, I think the future is really bright. I'm looking forward to hopefully having as much of a full season as we can in the springtime. But the fall was extremely, extremely valuable for our ladies. But I will say, and I think you would agree, 6 weeks was plenty. By the end of the 6 weeks, they were done. So we're not used to, and I think because of the academic rigor as well, no fall break, and they were so entrenched with what's going on in the classroom. So to put 6 weeks of softball on top of that, although it was good to be on the field, it's also an extra layer of stress for them. So 6 weeks was just about right. 5 weeks may have been a little better, but we were glad we got the extra weekend as well. So yeah, hopefully it'll pay dividends, because I know we probably did more, at least as much or more than most of the other PAC schools did as well in the fall. So we should have a little bit of a leg up moving into the spring.
Yeah, a couple questions there. I think, one, what is the expectation for the spring? And two, talking about the spring, removing that Florida trip, which is a valuable team building trip. How do you see that affecting the spring season?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I think it makes the preseason, especially when you're practicing in the gym and it's the months of January and February. It's cold outside. It's kind of gloomy. You always have that glimmer at the end of the tunnel of Florida and getting down there and enjoying that warm weather and just know that you have that 10-day time frame where you're absolutely going to be out there playing and an opportunity to start the season. So without that, the way the schedule is going to be constructed, conference only. We're hoping to still play 36 games this year if we're able to do so, but the way the conference is going to be structured, we're going to be looking to play games here in Beaver Falls and amongst the PAC up north here as early as the first week of March. And so we're really prayerful that we can get a good spring in terms of weather-wise. But I think missing out on that Florida trip, again, I think we're in a more of an advantageous position than most because we do have so many returning players that already have great camaraderie together. But getting the freshmen together and kind of getting them connected with the rest of the team is going to be really valuable in the first weeks as we start practicing. In terms of expectation, 2019, which was the last full year, we were back in the playoff hunt, made the playoffs. So that was kind of goal number one after we had a few years there. We're a little bit lean. So I think getting back to the playoffs was number one. Last year, had the season been done and complete, our goal was to win the conference championship, and I don't think that's changed. I think we have the personnel, the talent to be able to do it. We have a great core group. Our pitching, I think, will be strong, and we have a solid lineup of kids. A really good mix of young kids, veteran leadership. So from my perspective, anything less than winning a conference championship, I think, will be a bit of a disappointment. But I don't like putting those big expectations on a team because you never know how it's going to transpire, especially with COVID and testing and injuries in a normal year. So there's still a lot to decide that. But on paper, I would consider us one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the conference.
So it's not as bold as Coach Smith's undefeated prediction, but I will say, still, cautiously bold, I'll say.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I love Coach Smith's personality. I love her confidence. I'm sure her players appreciate her boldness. Maybe not. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I would say anything by saying, our expectation is to win the championship. I don't think that's anything our players would be surprised to hear me say. It's not something I wouldn't say to them directly. So they understand that. They know the competitive nature of the program that we're in, the history of the program that they're in. And, we pride ourselves in success, and anything short of that is disappointing. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah. So just, you mentioned a couple of times, real quick, just touch on some of those returning players that you really think are going to make a huge impact this year.
Yeah, well, we have 3 seniors. So, I mean, I'll start with them. Kylie Jo Ward will be, in the outfield for us. Maddie Schultz, who moved from second base to third base last year. It looks as though she's going to move back to second base this year for her senior year, just based on personnel. Her versatility, flexibility that way is really, really helpful for us. And then Marina Manapelli, who's also has made position changes, started her career at third base last year, moved to first, may do a little bit of both this year. So again, having that versatility in the lineup defensively is really helpful for us. But but those three are going to be very valuable in terms of our offensive and defensive production. Center field, Sarah Johnson's, a returning all conference player, 2 years. I mean, obviously we don't count last year, but she's without question one of the most dynamic players in the conference, our leadoff hitter. She gets on base. She's kind of been the spark that starts us offensively. So we need her to get on base and cause some havoc on the base pass to get us going offensively. Nikki West, she's most likely going to move a position. She played shortstop and pitched for us last year. She'll most likely move to third base, but then she's going to be in the pitching mix as well. So Nikki, along with what I consider to be our number one, our ace pitcher, in terms of being on the mound, Haley Smith, who really enjoyed a brief freshman campaign in Florida last year, but got off to an amazing start. I consider her to be one of the top pitchers in the conference, and we're going to throw her into the fire. So in a lot of respects, we're going to kind of live or die with what Haley Smith does on the mound for us. And so we're excited about her. Her sister, Maddie, behind the plate. We have a couple options. Paige Dill is a junior catcher, but Maddie Smith got off to a great start catching last year as well. So kind of a mixture there. We have a couple freshmen and sophomore in the mix as well. Maddie Forsyth coming back after, again, abbreviated freshman year, most likely to at least to start the season. Looks like she's going to earn the starting shortstop position. So still a lot of things to be determined, a lot of positions to look at as we start and get back into the season once we get back to practice. But like I said, having that strong core of players is essential for us to really have success. But we're relying on a handful of them, and if they do what we think they can do, we should be in a good place.
Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up, and I obviously I'm looking forward to the spring season, and I hope get a chance to play, compete in the conference, and I hope we are in a place to win the conference championship at the end of the season.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, although our expectation is to win a championship, like we said, and it would be disappointing if we don't do that. In all honesty, being able to get on the field and have a season at all, to be able to finish and to get the young ladies out there and be able to compete again, and get some sense of normalcy back in their lives, is going to be really, really helpful. So we just hope we can get to that point and get these kids back on the field competing and enjoy softball, because it was really, really disappointing last year when it didn't happen.
Well, thanks, Van, for a great interview and kind of highlighting the upcoming softball season. We're looking forward to getting Coach Sumner on in early 2021 to talk about the baseball season, and that will kind of wrap up all of our sports, and then we'll start over again. We're looking forward to coming back on air around mid-January, and hope to have Dr. Traub join us to kind of finalize the decisions that the President's Athletic Conference made for spring sports.
Yeah, he's certainly been in the middle of all of those discussions as the president's chair for this year. And I think, again, I've said this many times throughout the semester, but I think the PAC is certainly blessed to have his leadership walking through this time. And he's done such a really great job. I've been privy to a lot of those conversations within the President's Council. His leadership style is very, very good. And, trying to get input from all those different schools is challenging. People have different viewpoints and different ideas about which direction to go. So he's been able to navigate that very well. And so, yeah, I think after the first of the year, we'd love to have him back on here, and with what we hope was going to be really great news. Because once we get to that point, we're going to be really close to actually competition happening. And, we've said this for so many months now, just getting those kids back out there competing is so important. So hopefully after the new year, we can get our kids back here safely on campus, and then start talking about some actual games and some results on these Tornado Tuesdays, and some honors and things like that our kids are going to be getting. So I'm really, really looking forward to the spring. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be busy, but it's certainly going to fulfill the content of Tornado Tuesdays without a doubt.
Yeah, it's going to be so much easier for us. I really am looking forward to talking about actual games and scores and updates. But real quick, I wanted to take a flashback in Geneva history. On this date in 2019, Geneva's Cal Hubbard was named to the NFL 100 all-time team. Celebrating the 100th season of the NFL, they named the all-time team and recognized Cal Hubbard as one of the best football players in NFL history. So
yeah,
pretty amazing.
Those of you that are historians of Geneva, that Cal Hubbard is it's interesting because he's always been known as the only person in both the pro football and pro baseball halls of fame. Now, I don't know if that's different now because last week Al Michaels just won the Ford Frick Award and he got inducted into the baseball wing of the Announcers Hall of Fame, and he's already in Canton for the football one. So Al Michaels is technically in both halls of fame, but not as a player. But Cal Hubbard is in the baseball hall of fame as an umpire as well. So,
But
yeah, so it's a little technicality.
He's not going to be inducted officially until this Friday. So as of today,
That's right.
It still stands true. So
that's right. But still an amazing tribute and a story for Cal Hubbard. I mean, a lot of people, when they hear Geneva, they, those of us that aren't around every day, that they know the fact that Cal Hubbard was an amazing football player, offensive lineman, and then went on to become a major league umpire and is in the Hall of Fame for both. So a great honor for sure.
Well, we're going to take a few weeks off, but we wish all of you a Merry Christmas and a blessed New Year, and we'll see you back here in 2021.